Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, quick channel update. My desire to do anything with board games right now is zero. Nada, zilch, none. I have absolutely no desire to spend time focusing like any amount of energy on board games. And that happens to me. I've mentioned it before, but I go through these phases, right, where I'm into one hobby and then I am out for a while and then I come back. So, you know, my love for board games will return, but right now, like, the last thing I want to do in my day is play a board game. You know, I've been working on a lot of music. I've been playing a lot of video games. I'm getting like my dungeon crawl and adventure game fix with video games right now. Dungeon crawls, been playing a lot of Grim Dawn, and I went back and played some Torchlight 2. And like for adventure games, I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima, which is absolutely fantastic. Loving the crap out of that game. So good. But my last video on books got some really good comments, and some people seemed pretty excited. So I'm going to continue doing videos on books for a while. And a couple people expressed interest in a Dungeon Dive book club. So let's try it. Let's see what happens. I have picked a book for our first one that I have already read, but I've been wanting to reread because it is so good. And that is Agents of Dreamland from Caitlin R. Kiernan. Now, some of you who aren't familiar with her, I get it. I avoided her like the plague for many, many years. Well, not the plague. I mean, people really aren't avoiding the plague now, are they? Are they? I avoided her like homework for many years, okay? She has seemed to be a writer that wrote a lot of like what you would call paranormal romances, or kind of like chick vampire lit, that kind of stuff. Just stuff that I'm not interested in. I have nothing against it. You know, I read a lot of like just like really bog standard genre stuff that I love. I just am not into a lot of the stuff that she writes, or so I thought. Turns out she writes her more like pop stuff in order to just kind of like fund some actual real like bona fide amazing pieces of fiction. And this was the first thing I read from her. And the reason why I read it is because Tor, the company, everybody, you know, if you're into genre fiction, you know Tor. A few years ago, Tor started this novella series, and I'm basically reading everything that they put out in this novella series because it is so good. And Agents of Dreamland is, I think, a masterpiece. I'm picking this book for our first book in the Dungeon Dive book club because, one, it's easily available. You can still get it in paperback. You can get it on a Kindle or any digital format. It's relatively cheap, under $12 US. And also it is short, so we'll make sure to get through it. On top of it being incredibly well written. And so this just says a government special agent known only as the Signal Man gets off a train on a stunningly hot morning in Winslow, Arizona. Later that day, he meets a woman in a diner to exchange information about an event that happened a week earlier, for which neither has an explanation, but that haunts the signalman. In a ranch house across the shore of the Salton Sea, a cult leader gathers up the weak and susceptible, the children of the next level. Definitely a play on the, oh, I've just forgot, the Hale Bob Comet crew. What were those guys called? Heaven's Gate. Fascinating group of people, Heaven's Gate. If you haven't read too much about Heaven's Gate, I highly suggest listening to a podcast that was made not too long ago. It's a whole series dedicated just to Heaven's Gate, and they're one of the most fascinating cults around. And I don't want to get into it, but just listen to it, and you might come away from that series with kind of a different perspective on them. But yeah, very good. Okay, so Children Next Level, and offers them something to believe in and a chance for transcendence. The future is coming, and they will help to usher it in. Now, if you're around my age, maybe a little older, and you remember the 90s, and our conspiracy theories back in the 90s were far more benign than they are today, and way more entertaining and fun to think about. And a lot of that had to do with Art Bell, Coast to Coast Radio, and Area 51 and UFOs and all of that kind of stuff, X-Files stuff, right? We were all into that. This is very much in that vein. It is kind of like written like a love letter to Area 51 and UFO cult conspiracy theories and Men in Black, X-Files, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it is so good. This was the first thing I ever read by her, and it completely opened my eyes to an author that I was totally wrong about. So that's why I'm picking this. I think it'll be a good read. I'm really looking forward to reading it again. I've been wanting to reread it and talk about it. And so what we'll do is, maybe get the book soon, read it. Mid-August or so, I will post a review, and then we'll set something up if there is interest on like Google Teams, or not Google Teams, Google Chat. What is it? Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts. They changed the name, Google Meetings or something. They changed it to something way more forgettable, but I think that's free now for everybody. And so we can set up a time to just, chat for an hour or so about the book, and maybe enjoy an adult beverage while doing so together. And yeah, so that's it. The first book of the Dungeon Dive Book Club, Agents of Dreamland, from Caitlin R. Kiernan. And we'll talk about it soon. Talk to you guys later. Bye.